Okay, I admit it. It's easy to get a little bit lazy, a little bit selfish around here. So I remember, what was it, 2 years ago when Starbucks did their Race Forward campaign, where every day the baristas were going to give us a cup marked with some kind of racial slogan. They were going to hand it to us with our lattes, and then they were going to engage us in conversation about race. Translation, they were going to try and lecture us on race. It was never clear to me, while the person in front of me was having this long, extended conversation about race, how I was going to get my black coffee. But maybe Starbucks didn't think that through. Whatever, after a couple days, they just shut it all down. And so the reason I say I was selfish is because I thought this was going to be the Colin Flaherty Full Employment Act for the rest of my life. All I was going to do was make videos or use videos of people going into Starbucks with the latest horrific story of black crime and violence, and take a video of those people going, "Hey barista, what's up with this? How do you explain this black on white murder? How do you explain this ridiculous level of black criminality? How do you explain why the black people on that bus just beat the hell out of that white person?" And it was always going to be local, always going to be right inside the Starbucks, about something that happened nearby. Starbucks ruined my plans. But anyway, we still get to do it every couple of months when something really crazy happens in Starbucks. And we still get to ask Starbucks, what's up with all this black criminality at Starbucks? You guys said it was all about white racism, racial inequality. Well, all this black criminality is being directed at you, Starbucks. What did you do? How are you guilty? Well, you are guilty, right? Let's take a look at two things. One, a recent story out of Atlanta. Two, a clip from the CEO of Starbucks, where he's explaining his philosophy on racial equality to us. Then we'll have a bonus clip of an old Starbucks, not too old, a Starbucks story where black people are going crazy in a Starbucks. Let's get it on.
New developments today in a series of burglaries at Starbucks across the metro area. Police say they caught one of the suspects who could also be responsible for dozens of burglaries in Fulton, DeKalb, and Gwinnett counties. Channel 2's Mike Pachenik broke news of his arrest. Mike's live in Dunwoody with the missteps that police say helped catch him. Mike.
Jovita, Dunwoody police tell me they got a call early Tuesday morning about a burglary going on here inside of this Ashford Dunwoody location. When they got here, they say they found two men running into the woods behind it.
We received reports of a burglary in progress at the Starbucks in front of Perimeter Mall.
Dunwoody Police Sergeant Robert Parsons says his officers rushed to this Ashford Dunwoody Starbucks Tuesday morning.
The alarm company saw two individuals crawling around on the floor on the surveillance footage and called it in immediately.
When cops arrived, Parsons says they saw two men running into the woods.
At that time, we requested a canine unit respond from Doraville Police.
After a short chase, he says they caught up with one of the men, Quadir Johnson. Parsons says detectives believe Johnson and his accomplice have been breaking into Starbucks stores across Fulton, DeKalb, and Gwinnett counties, including at this one the other day at a Sandy Springs location.
We have heard reports that it could be over 30 involved. If in fact they are connected, it would, several burglaries.
That's awful.
Customers told us they're surprised to hear about Starbucks as a target.
Why would you break in somewhere? And why Starbucks?
You try to have a business and someone comes in and, steals from you. It's hurtful.
Kay Sullivan says she's glad police caught Johnson.
He should spend some time in jail. Don't let him out.
Look, I hate to subject you to this. This might be fingernails on the blackboard kind of stuff. But every once in a while, we really have to hear something from the source about how ridiculously insane some white people are about being in such denial, deceit, and delusion about the level of black criminality. And somehow it's not the fault of the criminals, it's the fault of you and you and you and you and you. Every white person you see, every white person at Starbucks, every person in America except for the people actually committing the crime. So let's give Howard Schultz a listen for a couple of minutes, then we'll go to the other Starbucks story.
I grew up in Brooklyn, New York, in the projects, federally subsidized housing. living in the projects, you're living among a very diverse group of people. African Americans, Latino, every religion. And from an early age, I learned very good lessons about living among a lot of different people and getting along. And the understanding that I did not see color or any issues whatsoever with race as a young boy. It was imprinted on me early on that we live together as one. As I look at the current situation in Ferguson, New York, Cleveland, and for that matter the rest of the country, with regard to racial tension, racial inequality, the unfortunate situations between police and people of color, I think there's an outcry of action that is required by the citizenry of the country as well as the government. And that is to reach out and try and create a better level of understanding, compassion, and most importantly, empathy of what it means, in a sense, metaphorically, to put your feet in someone else's shoes. Well, just in the last few months, having these town hall meetings with Starbucks employees who we call partners in Seattle, Oakland, St. Louis, Los Angeles, New York, and now here in Chicago, has really demonstrated to me that there's such a longing and a hunger for people to have a conversation, to share with one another their own life experience, and the power of vulnerability, because it is a catalyst for empathy. And I just don't think this is a time where I, or for that matter, many people in America should be a bystander and let this go on. That we can make a positive difference with our families, our children, our neighbors, in recognizing that we can live together. I think most black people and most white people want the best for their families and recognize, most of us recognize, we can and should live together in harmony. All of these forums have produced a high degree of emotion, and they've all been the same. And that is when you unleash the opportunity for people in a safe environment to talk about their life experience, their concerns, their vulnerability, and in many cases, racial injustice, it produces a high degree of empathy. As a result of all of these forums, I'm very proud to say that in partnership with USA Today, we're going to create this program in which we start developing a tool and a resource under the title of Race Together, of providing insight and information and education to the readers of the USA Today, to the customers of Starbucks, and I think it can be a very positive catalyst for conversation and hopefully uplifting change in which people recognize that there are things that we could do as private citizens to move the country forward with regard to this issue. We have to all live together. I've learned in my own business at Starbucks that a diverse workforce, of being inclusive, of people who are different than you are, different ideas, different life experience, creates a much better conversation, and in terms of business and my own private life, a much better outlook on the challenges we all have. I look back on 1968, on what Martin Luther King tried to do and what he accomplished, and I think about where we are today, and I'm sad to come to the conclusion that we haven't made much progress, and for many who are living on the other side of the tracks, who feel there's a sense of hopelessness and conscious bias against them, they feel as if we've gone backwards. I think there's a time in the country where there's such polarization and dysfunction in Washington that it requires businesses and business leaders and the citizenry of the country to recognize that we have to come together and do all that we can to try and make a positive difference and not be a bystander. The gifts of America are not an entitlement. We have to earn it. And I think this is a time in the country where we must recognize that going down this road of such racial tension and racial inequality is not going to serve the nation well, and certainly not going to serve the people well who feel a sense of hopelessness. So it's not only my childhood that imprinted me with a greater understanding and sensitivity of these issues, it's where I am today in terms of my company. Starbucks Coffee Company has stores in every community in America. We're serving millions of people every day, and it is a very, very diverse group of customers. And I think we have an opportunity to engage in conversation and leverage our national footprint and our scale for good.
Okay, Howard, that was all very nice. Is there one person on this planet who was actually listening to that besides you? Is there anybody who actually listened to that besides somebody who worked for you? Is there anybody who heard you talk and said, who didn't say that guy is seriously disturbed? He's seriously in delusion. He's living in the clouds in some condo tower 80 floors above the ground. He looks down at us ants scurrying around down here and he goes, boy, that one group of ants over there, even though they're not, they're committing a lot of crime, they're not being really treated fairly by that other group of ants over there. Thus speaketh Howard Schultz. Let's get to a story we posted, I think last year. Kind of recap a little bit of the Starbucks business. In a perfect world of perfect objectivity, we wouldn't have favorite stories of black violence and denial. But I'm sorry, I just can't help but smile very broadly whenever I think about what Starbucks did last year. Remember when they started that big campaign, Conversations on Race, and how long that lasted? How many days that lasted? 1, 2, or 3 before they closed it all in? I think a lot of customers were saying, hey, what's up with all this black crime and violence? I don't think Starbucks liked that. But I also knew that at some point after that big conversation on race, Starbucks was going to have a lot more questions they could not or did not want to answer. What about this little episode in Chicago? Customer goes in, gets a little coffee, comes out and gets killed. How about this episode in Philadelphia?
Stop at this Center City Starbucks at 16th and Arch turned into a violent encounter, all caught on video.
I found myself looking forward to all these conversations with baristas, or at least hearing about them, when people would say, hey, what's up with all this black mob violence and black on white crime and black criminality at Starbucks? What's up with that? And having the baristas explain to us race had nothing to do with it. It was all about a bunch of other stuff. And just because black people were involved in this wildly out of proportion, that is just a coincidence. It's the world's greatest coincidence. That's the kind of stuff you think of when you ingest the world's most popular psychoactive drug, coffee. And oh yeah, it just happened again, this time in Peoria, Illinois.
At 4:46, we've got some breaking news in Peoria. That's right, police right now at the scene of a Starbucks where they're investigating something that went down.
Something that went down. When you're a hot chick on local news, that's the kind of stuff you can get away with saying, and no one will ever notice.
Mark Lieberman is live near 75th Avenue in Thunderbird with what we know so far. Good morning, Mark.
Good morning. Yeah, what we know so far is this was some type of an armed robbery. It happened around 3:30 this morning, and it happened right here at this Starbucks, we're told. You can see a number of police cars still on scene. There were a couple more earlier. Those cleared out probably within the last 5 or 10 minutes. But what we know so far, and we haven't been told a lot, there was a safe that was not taken that was inside that Starbucks, but the contents inside the safe, or at least some of them, were taken at gunpoint. We're told this is an armed robbery, but nobody was injured. That's what they know so far. In terms of suspects, I asked police on scene just a couple minutes ago how many suspects were involved, what they looked like. At this point, they say they don't know. They haven't been able to release that information, and you can actually watch. It looks like possibly one or both of them are now driving off, but the investigation, of course, continues, guys. And as soon as we get more information, we will bring that to you.
3 episodes of black criminality at Starbucks, all in the last 2 to 3 months. I think they recently opened a Starbucks in Ferguson, Missouri. Eagerly awaiting news from there as well. I've been in a lot of Starbucks, a lot of times, all over the country. I've never seen a white person do this. Oh yeah, they did catch up with the guy. They caught up with his description. It indeed was a black person. You think it's time for Starbucks to reinstitute their little conversation on race? If so, I'd be happy to donate a few copies of that scintillating bestseller that might help the baristas out a little bit. I didn't even have the nerve to watch this, but apparently there's a video around of guy Howard Schultz now trashing Trump. Good Lord, where do we get these people? How do these otherwise capable and brilliant people, how are they so brilliant at one thing and so insane at the other things? I really would like to know the answer to that question, even if that answer does make the black kids angry.